So in the previous little lecture segment, we talked about the anchoring heuristic. In this segment, we're going to discuss the representativeness heuristic. That's when you judge the likelihood of events or objects based on your essentially stereotype of that event or person. Basically, how well does a particular situation or description of a person match my internal representation or stereotype of that person or group? So I gave you a description of a man and asked you what's more likely, that the fellow's a university professor or a truck driver. If you sat down and did the math, you would know that statistically speaking, it's more likely that any given man is a truck driver than a college literature professor, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of truck drivers and relatively few university English professors. But I asked you to make that decision from your gut. And when you do that, when you use your internal, unconscious, fast thinking system, what happens? Well, you read the description. A man is slim, short, wears glasses, and likes poetry. Well, that fits my stereotype of an English professor, so that's what I'll say. It certainly doesn't fit my stereotype or internal representation that I associate with truck drivers. So based on my stereotype, I pick an English professor, even though mathematically speaking, it's less likely. Here's another example. This is a question that comes right from Kahneman and Tversky's work, and it's called Linda the Bank Teller. That's the name of this famous question. So Linda is a 31-year-old woman who's single. She's considered outspoken and very bright. She majors in philosophy in college. As a student, she was deeply concerned with discrimination and social issues. She participated in several demonstrations. Okay, so that's a description of Linda. And then after you read that description, you have to answer the following question. Which appears to be more likely, that Linda is a bank teller or that Linda is a bank teller and a feminist? Now, the average person, when they're answering that question, will say Linda is a bank teller and a feminist. Why? Because the description fits our stereotype of a feminist. However, there's a problem. There are more bank tellers in the world than there are people who are bank tellers and feminists, right? You've got this whole world of bank tellers, and the ones who are bank tellers and feminists has to be a relatively small subset of that area. So imagine I asked you a totally different question without a backstory. If I said, tell me, are there more bank tellers who are right-handed, or are there more bank tellers? Well, that's a stupid question. Of course there's going to be bank tellers who are left-handed, so it has to be the case that there's more bank tellers than there are right-handed bank tellers. It's the same thing with Linda the banker. There's always going to be more people who are bankers than there are people who are bankers and feminists. That's called base rate. It's called base rate neglect. All I want you to know is that we pick the mathematically less likely option because it fits our stereotype. It fits our internal representation of what a feminist is like. Here's a similar sort of question. Sarah loves to listen to New Age music and faithfully reads her horoscope every day. In her spare time, she enjoys aromatherapy and attends a local spirituality group. Is it more likely that Linda is a school teacher or a holistic healer? Now, that sounds like the description of a holistic healer to me, and that is actually the answer that most people give when they go with their gut instinct, right? It's like, oh, that fits my stereotype of holistic healers, so she must be a holistic healer. But here's the problem. Mathematically, There are over 3 million school teachers in the US, and there's only a few thousand holistic healers. So numerically, it's way more likely that Sarah is actually a school teacher. But the description of her fits our stereotype of a holistic healer, so that's what we pick. The representativeness heuristic has really important impacts for gambling. So anybody who likes to go to Vegas, listen to this. Okay. Because it turns out the representativeness heuristic has implications for gambling because we have a stereotype of what chance looks like. And that stereotype is not very good. What is the most likely sequence of births for the next 6 babies born in Northridge, California? What's more likely? That the 6 babies are born boy, 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 girl, 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 or that the 6 babies are born girl, boy, boy, girl? Well, to me, it looks a whole lot more likely that the second one, B, girl, boy, boy, girl, is the more likely possibility for the next 6 babies that are born in Northridge. But if you think about it, that's really goofy, right? Because for that to happen, for B to be more likely than A, in reality, they're both equally likely. For B to be more likely than A, I mean, just imagine you're at Northridge Hospital and, I don't know, a woman gives birth to a boy and the nurse runs down the hall and said, okay, last one's a boy, I need a girl now. I mean, it doesn't work that way, right? Any birth is 50-50, boy or a girl. And it doesn't matter that the lady in the room next door just gave birth to a boy. That's not going to influence whether you give birth to a boy or a girl. But in our heads, it kind of makes sense. The gambler's fallacy is the application of representativeness heuristic to gambling. And it says, gambler's fallacy is said to occur when you expect a departure from the average to be corrected in the short run. In other words, if something hasn't happened in a while, you think, oh, it's bound to happen now. Okay, and I'll stick with the babies just to show you how goofy our thinking is there. So A here looks unlikely to me because like, wow, 3 boys in a row, I'm just due for a girl, right? Well, I mean, how is that supposed to work? It's like, oh, 3 boys, somebody's got to give birth to a girl now. I mean, it can't work. It can't happen. My father would fall victim to the gambler's fallacy all the time. I grew up in Northern California, so every once in a while my parents would go to Reno and go gambling, and my dad liked to play blackjack, 21, and he'd lose and lose and lose. And he'd think in his head, well, I've lost the last 5 hands. I've got to win the next hand. So he would, the more he lost, the more he would increase his bets. Our trips to Reno tended to be kind of short. That strategy doesn't work. The cards don't know that you just lost the last 5 hands, right? If you're in a game of chance and you're rolling dice, it's like, wow, nobody's rolled a 7 in a while. We're due for a 7. The dice don't know, right? They don't care. Chance, yeah, we have averages and we have chance, but averages, especially in games of chance, the average is taken over the infinity of all time. So yes, it would be really weird if I measured boys and girls' births in the city of Los Angeles, and one day, the 5,000 kids who are born in LA every day, if all of them were boys. That would be weird. The gambler's fallacy comes about when we think that a small number of events, 6, 7, 8, 20, that somehow averages should be obtained within a small number of events. That's where we get kind of wonky and make mistakes. And Nevada makes a whole lot of money based on our illogical thinking when it comes to chance. Okay, come right back and we'll talk about the availability heuristic.